Hey guys, it's BenTbeyondrepair. We're back with another attempt at a Google Doc. And what I want to talk to you guys about is the theory behind auto-attacking perfectly in League and how complicated it actually is to auto-attack efficiently in League. And after we go through some of the theory here, we can go ahead and hop into a practice tool game to show some of this as best as I can. But I try not to do that because we do know that we prefer the yapping. So when you go to auto attack, it's a little bit different for range versus melee, but there are three parts to an auto attack animation in League. There is the wind up. This is where your champion starts their swing, or if you're a ranged champion, you're pulling back on your bow or whatever it is. You go through some sort of wind up that if you want to go through with your auto attack, you can't really do anything to stop the wind up animation because you have to play through that before you will actually auto attack or fire. So let's start with the ranged champion. So you go through your wind up with your bow, right? You're all ready to go, and you've gone through this animation while you're standing still, so you have to stop moving during the wind up animation, and you're just getting ready to fire. Then there's this instant, this moment, where you actually fire the projectile, and the projectile starts flying through the air separate from your champion. Now, at this point, as a ranged champion where the projectile has left your character, you no longer need to commit anything to that auto attack. You can instantly move or throw an ability or do anything else, and that auto attack is going to hit because that auto attack is already in the air. If you're a melee champion, this moment of firing isn't really firing a projectile because you don't have a projectile. It's more of when you hit the person or as soon as the damage registers on the person, which happens at the same time as you hit. So, you'll thonk them, you'll clonk them, and they'll have a little bit of red in their health bar because there's some damage done to them. The damage number will pop up next to them, etc. These are indicators that as a melee champion, your auto attack is finished, even though if you continue to just not touch anything on your mouse or your keyboard, your champion will sit there for like an extra half a second and they'll, slice their sword through them or take their anchor on Nautilus and continue to push it through them. And that is what's called the follow-through animation, which is a completely unnecessary and purely visual beautification element that exists in the game that you can cancel consistently every single time you auto attack in League. So when people think about auto attacking well in League and balancing their movement between their auto attacking, they're often thinking about making sure that they're moving between their auto attacks. But what a lot of people don't realize or don't put into practice is that you can cancel the follow through animation on every single one of your auto attacks to move for even longer than you're able to if you just move between your autos. So what that means is if you're a ranged champion, when you go to auto attack, once you've right clicked them or clicked attack move, you should have your cursor ready to move and to right click to move in whatever direction you're going to move next, because you're going to need to move a lot faster than you think that you do, because you're going to need to move the second that your projectile leaves your character and has fired if you're a ranged champion, or the second that your damage has gone through and that you've clonked them as a melee champion. And so because of that, you can basically pre-prepare to move in whatever direction you want to move in by preparing your cursor, whether it's it could be, let's say you're chasing someone, your cursor is going to be in front of you to keep moving forward and closing distance on them. If you're kiting away from someone, your cursor is going to be behind you so that you're immediately running away as soon as you can while still getting the damage from your auto attack. Or, if you're just trying to dodge, or maybe you're not sure where you want to move, but you want to move somewhere to potentially have a little bit more varied movement and dodge, then you go to the left or the right, so you're not sacrificing any distance one way or another, but you're going to the side, so it's harder to hit you if they respond with some ability or somebody else responds with some ability when you hit. So by doing this, right, you're going to cancel your follow-through animation by immediately inputting a movement command. It's actually very similar to how Riven is actually the exact same thing that Riven does as part of her Q combo. her Q combo is literally to auto attack and then move to the side and then Q, so that she's able to Q faster, after her auto attack animation, so that she's not stuck in the back end of her auto attack animation and can actually auto Q auto much faster. This is exactly what Riven does in her fast combo. This is applicable to melee champions, to ranged champions, to everybody in the game, except maybe Callista, because Callista can't cancel her auto attacks, although I'm not really 100% sure on Callista. I don't know much about Callista. But yeah, pretty much every champion in the game can cancel their follow-through animation, so we want to be doing that consistently. So here's the theory, though. If you try to cancel your follow-through animation, but you're canceling it too early, you'll cancel your whole auto attack. Obviously, if you cancel during the windup, before this moment where you fired the projectile, if you're ranged, or hit if you're a melee champion, then you're just going to cancel the whole auto attack. And that's really bad, because it means that you're going to lose all of your DPS efficiency. So the way I want to break this down is to think of your auto attacking well in two categories. There's your DPS efficiency and there's your movement efficiency. What most low ranked players have is they know that they want to get their auto off and hit the person, and so they are doing 100% of the damage per second, let's say, that they can do, say 100% damage efficiency, but their movement is at like 20% efficiency. They're so bad at moving between their auto attacks in iron and bronze, and they're never canceling their follow-through animation, at least not on purpose, and so they're moving 20% of the time that they could, which actually leads to a loss in total DPS overall, because if you move more, you're actually going to be able to get an extra auto attack in before they get out of your range and things like that. So, but their DPS efficiency is at 100%, but in order to get 100% instead of 95%, they're sacrificing 100% of their movement. Well, what we'd rather have is 95% movement, 95% DPS, or preferably 99% movement, 99% DPS, but you would have to be a very, very good player to do that. You want to sacrifice a little bit of each so that you're getting the most out of both, because both are going to help each other in order to be more successful and better as a player. So again, when it comes to canceling your follow-through animation, you absolutely can't cancel your auto attack too early, because if you try to approach 100% efficiency with canceling your follow-through animation, you're going to inevitably go over the line and accidentally cancel your auto attack too early. So if we imagine a human who's just trying their best, if they're trying to break the exact moment that they possibly can, half the time they're going to get it right and have a very fast cancel on their follow-through animation, cancel almost the entire follow-through animation, but half the time they're going to cancel their auto attack in its entirety. Well, that's not acceptable, because we're not sacrificing 5% of our DPS then, we're sacrificing that entire auto attack. So we've just now locked ourselves in the wind-up animation for 95% of its duration, given up some movement, and then not done any damage for it. So that's not acceptable, right? So you can't be canceling your auto attack. So you can't aim for 100% efficiency, really. The best that you can get is maybe 95% of your follow-through animation is being canceled. Or if you're a really good player, if you're the Gumayushis of the world, maybe you're pushing 96, 97, 98, 99%, but it's simply impossible for a human really to be doing that with 100% efficiency. Also, each champion's auto attack animation is different. Sometimes champions, even the same champion, will have different auto attack animations in different situations, like when they crit or don't crit. Nautilus has a different auto attack animation when he has his passive root up on the target versus if it's already down and already been used on that target. So you have to get used to a lot of different animations, even within the same champion. So then on top of that, if you're talking about learning a whole class of champions like AD carries or something like that, you've got a lot of work cut out for you to learn the timing on every single different one. But this is the principle behind, or the theory behind, canceling your follow-through animation, that you can cancel probably half of the time that you're standing still auto attacking. You can cancel your follow through animation, but if you do it too early, you'll cancel your whole auto attack, which is not acceptable or efficient at all. So what you'd rather do is make sure that your auto attack is going through, but cancel most of your follow through animation, 95% of it, whatever. Even if you have to start slower, if you have to start 90%, 80% and build your way up, it's totally fine. But you're trying to get 100% DPS efficiency, 95% movement efficiency, but that's 95% movement efficiency on times that we weren't moving at all before because we weren't canceling our follow through animation before. So 95% movement efficiency during your follow through animation is a lot better than 0. Okay, then we have the other thing, which people probably already know about moving between your auto attacks, which is moving between your auto attack timer or its cooldown. And basically, there's really two ways that you could think about going about doing this. Well, what a lot of players do, what I think most low elo players do, is they know that they should be moving between their auto attacks, but they don't move for very much of the time that they can move between their auto attacks. They're probably moving, well, for some players, it's probably really bad at lower ranks, but let's say to be generous, some of these players are moving at 60 or 70% of the time that they could possibly be moving between their auto attacks. So they're spending a lot of time not canceling their follow through animation, standing still after their auto has already really fired, before they realize they need to move again or before they click fast enough to move again. And then they're also starting to auto attack too early, which is a big problem I don't hear people talking about enough, which is you are not quite sure, especially if you're not very good at well, I don't want to say if you're not very good at the game, but if you're not super comfortable with the game or your champion, you're maybe not quite sure exactly when your champion's auto attack is ready yet. And so because you're not quite sure when the auto attack is ready yet, you just start trying to auto too early. You even have a feeling inside of you, I want to be able to auto attack faster. I want to be able to auto attack earlier. So I'm going to try to. And while this results in you getting as much DPS as possible or 100% DPS efficiency, it often means that you're losing 30% or 40% of the time that you could be moving between your auto attacks because you're stopping and standing still before you're even able to do the wind-up animation or your auto attack is ready. So you just end up basically stopping and standing still before you go to auto attack. And that takes away such a huge percentage of your movement in between your auto attacks that it's not worth the fact that you're getting 100% DPS efficiency instead of 95%. But I think that this can also depend on the scenario. So I've written down here that let's say you're 80 carry versus 80 carry and you're in an auto attack battle to the death. This can be true of melee champions as well in top lane or wherever. But if you're just autoing someone to death and you're in one of these fights to the death, no one is committed to running away or leaving. You're just sitting there hitting each other and that's it. If you're locked into just sitting there and hitting each other and that's it, and you don't really need the extra movement to dodge out an ability, maybe their abilities have been used or they're out of mana, and you're just sitting there autoing them to death and no one's committed to running out of range, then you should probably auto attack early, even if it means you're standing still and not moving for a little bit more than you should, because it's more important, especially if it's coming down to somebody living or dying by one auto, which is the case in a lot of these really close situations here where both players are committed to not running away and just killing the other person first. Obviously, in a situation where you're just committed to killing the other person first and you're just standing there autoing each other to death, it's better to just stand still, even if they can't hit you with anything else, and just make sure that your auto attack is coming out first, rather than trying to move and oops, I accidentally auto attacked a little bit too late because I moved a little bit more and now I'm dead, or we trade kills because my auto attack flew after, it went out in the air, but it flew, but their auto attack hit me first and so I died. So if you're just in one of these weird niche situations where you're just auto attacking each other to death, better to sacrifice movement when you just don't need the movement at all to make sure your DPS is coming out a little bit faster. But in most situations, if you are having to dodge abilities or kite or space or trying to run them down and they're at the edge of your range and they're running away from you or you're running away from them, then moving is probably better, because even if you give up 5% of your DPS, or you're a little bit slow on your last auto or something like that, that's probably going to be less bad for you in that situation than giving up 30% of your movement, like we talked about before. So in most situations, it's better to move between your auto attacks for more than the duration of your auto attack cooldown, if that makes sense. So you'd rather have 110% movement efficiency and 90% DPS efficiency, or 105% movement efficiency, meaning you're getting to move more than you should between your autos, and you're sacrificing some DPS in order to do that, but you're getting the best of both worlds, as opposed to trying to desperately auto attack too early. And for a lot of lower ranked players, that means auto attacking way too early and sacrificing 30-40% of your movement. So you're getting 100% DPS efficiency by trying to auto attack early instead of 95%, but your movement efficiency is going from 105% down to 60%. And so that is such a big trade-off, such a bad drop-off, that you'd rather, in most situations where dodging matters, where spacing and distance matters, you're better off moving for longer between your auto attacks than your auto attack takes to come off of cooldown or be ready. So you want to move until you're sure your auto attack is ready, or even a little bit longer, just to be really sure, rather than trying to auto attack before your auto is ready. This again gets really hard and complicated, especially for newer players, because your attack speed also changes many times throughout the game. Every time you level up, every time you buy an attack speed item, which you're buying all the time, especially on champions that rely on these mechanics the most. And so that can be really difficult, because you know how I said you're learning the timing for all these different champions and stuff like that, but the timing also changes every single game, multiple times a game, many, probably dozens of times a game, your attack speed changes. And so it can be really hard to do this consistently, and good players are able to do it at all these different attack speeds by getting a feel. When they're auto-attacking minions and farming, they're getting that rhythm of, where they're at, and constantly adjusting that rhythm or that beat to which they're able to move and then auto and then move and then auto. They're constantly adjusting that in their heads, even though they're having to deal with many different types of attack speed, or different amounts of attack speed. So to summarize really quickly here, we got 3 parts to an auto attack animation, and one is actually cancelable, which allows you to move more, which is the back end follow through animation, whether you're melee or a ranged champion. This is any time that you spend standing still watching your champion fire their auto attack, when your champion, if your range already has the projectile in the air, or if you're melee, the damage has already registered on the enemy champion, you've already thonked them over the head. You can also obviously spend time moving between your auto attacks, but in most situations, what most players do is they move too little between their auto attacks by trying to auto attack before their auto attack is ready to make sure they're getting the most DPS in. But what you actually want to be doing is the opposite, where you're moving for more than the cooldown of your auto attack, so that you get 100+% movement efficiency while only sacrificing and being a little bit slow on your auto attacks, like a couple percent or something like that. And this also means that because these things exist, this balance between movement efficiency and auto attack damage efficiency, it means a couple of things. One, it means that you can't auto attack perfectly as a human. It's actually impossible. And so you may think that you are, but no one is. Even really good players, even the best Korean AD carries, are not auto attacking perfectly. It's impossible. So it's a never-ending high skill cap thing that you can do in the game, even on a melee champion, that you can always be improving. And I think a lot of players gloss over that. And, number 2, if you're getting more movement, that's going to translate into more damage later on, because you're either kiting away and able to preserve your HP and then re-enter the fight and actually deal more damage later on, or you're chasing somebody down, and well, yes, you're not making sure that you're auto-attacking early every time to make sure you're always pumping that auto-attack out as soon as it's ready. If you're moving more, even if you're slower to get those auto-attacks out than you would normally be able to on the champion, by spending all that extra time moving, you're actually going to get more DPS in anyways by being able to stick to that person like glue and chase them down and get those auto-attacks in. It's actually especially important on melee champions, because as a melee champion, you probably know that you trade a lot of HP. You have these very skewed trades timing wise, where you give away a lot of your HP, you trade a lot of your HP to get into range of the champion you're trying to attack, especially if you're a melee champion trying to get onto a ranged champion. So you lose 200, 300, 400 HP in order to get on top of them. And so if you get on top of them and you stand still autoing them, and you get 1 or 2 auto attacks in and then they're out of range of you because they've kited away from you, then you're going to be useless. But if you're moving as much as you can and you're able to stay on top of them for 4 or 5 auto attacks, the difference in the damage output that you're going to be able to do as a melee champion because of that proper movement is going to way overcompensate for and make up for making sure that you don't have to worry about the timing of your auto attack by trying to auto attack too early. So it's really important on a melee champion where you're actually sacrificing HP in order to get on top of people to take advantage of this movement. Then the other thing that we need to know is that there's really 3 types of actual auto attack input commands in the game. There's 3 different types. There's right clicking, which obviously people know is like your standard form of auto attacking. And then there's attack move, which a lot of people are familiar with, where you'll hit like the A key or the X key and it'll show your champion's range. We'll see this in practice tool here in a second. And you'll see your champion's range indicator, and you'll be able to, attack the champion that's closest to your cursor if you have that setting on, or if not, it'll attack whatever champion is or whatever thing is closest to you. So we have attack move, right, which a lot of people use, and then we have right click, which a lot of people use. And then there's this, what I'm calling a new attack move, but it's basically the same thing as attack move, but instead of showing your champion's range indicator, it doesn't show your champion's range indicator, although there's another key that you can use to show that at the same time, which we'll get into, but it doesn't show your range indicator. And instead of having to click A and then left click to attack, it just instantly attacks when you click whatever key you have set up to do that. So there are different situations in which you would want to use these different types of auto attacks. And one of the problems people run into is they think that, oh, I prefer auto attacking by right clicking, or I prefer using attack move. But it's actually not really a personal preference, because there are situations where right clicking is objectively the only way that you can do these things well, and situations where attack moving is objectively the correct way to do things as best as you can. And we're going to explain that. So the problem is that there's this other key that you have, this other command that you have, which is the tilde key. This is the key to the left, because a lot of people don't even know what the tilde is. It's the key to the left of your 1 key. And the tilde key turns on target champions only. And when you have target champions only on, it won't let you right click on things like minions, towers, any entities or pets or whatever, anything that's not an enemy champion. Or actually, let me think about that. It does let you target your allied champions as well. But in the context of auto attacking, you're not auto attacking your allies anyways. So, tilde key lets you, target enemy champions only. Well, unfortunately, tilde does not work, attack champions only, does not work with attack move or with the new attack move. It just doesn't work, which means that when you're fighting someone in a minion wave, or when you're tower diving someone and they're able to hide behind their tower, but you still want to be able to auto attack them, you absolutely have to be objectively using right click with the tilde key turned on, so that you have attack champions only on when they're inside of a minion wave or inside of the grubs pit and there's 100 little grubbies everywhere, or any situation where there's an entity that you could be hitting, whether it's pets or minions or a turret. But there's a lot of situations where they're inside of a bunch of different entities, and you want to be 100% sure that you can't mess this up. You need to be right clicking with the tilde key. It's that simple. It's way more worth it to you to be right clicking with the tilde key than to be using attack move in these situations. In tower dives especially, it is simply not possible to attack move properly during a tower dive. You will inevitably, over a bunch of tower dives, hit the turret way too many times if you're trying to attack move during turret dives. So there are objectively situations where right click is the best way to do things. However, in most situations where they're not inside of a wave, or the risk of you hitting the wrong target inside of a wave is so low, or whatever, attack move is better for most generic situations where you're team fighting or something like that. And the reason why is because when you attack move by inputting the A click on the ground next to your champion, right in front of your champion, not on top of the enemy champion. And so what a lot of people do wrong with attack move is they prefer attack move. I do this a lot myself, actually. I'm working on it. But a lot of people use attack move the same as right click, which is they just use attack move to click on the other person. So all they're getting out of attack move is they like that they're seeing the range indicator and that they're hitting an extra key. But obviously hitting an extra key is actually a bad thing. In theory, maybe it helps you keep up your APM or something like that, helps you hit other keys faster. But having to hit other keys is actually just going to slow you down and be more clunky. It's like saying that not quick casting your abilities is good because it keeps your APM up. No, it's just harder to hit. So using attack move as just a right click substitute, where you're attack moving on by clicking on the target that you're trying to attack, you're doing the same thing as right clicking. You're just attacking them by pressing A and left click instead of right click, but it doesn't change anything about your cursor's positioning. The reason why attack move is good is because attack move allows you to attack the target that is, in front of you, closest to the input from your cursor. It allows you to attack them while keeping your cursor on top of your champion. This will be easier to see once we hop into a practice tool game, but the reason why this is important is because when you're moving and have good cursor placement in League, your cursor should stay very, very close to your champion so that you can easily turn one direction or another, or very quickly adjust the direction you're going to fire a skill shot and things like that. So there's a lot of reasons why at almost all times good players want their cursor close to their champion so they have the most finite and quickest control over where they're going to move their champion. So for this reason, what attack move is valuable for is attack moving the ground right in front of your champion, not targeting the champion who's far away from you that you're trying to attack, so that you can maintain your cursor placement. That's why attack move is good. So if you're just using attack move as a replacement for right click, you're probably not that it's terrible, but you're not using it in the most efficient way or the obviously theoretically correct way to use it. You should be using it on the ground next to your champion to maintain your cursor placement so you can quickly go from auto attacking to moving left and right. The problem with having your cursor out by right clicking somebody who's in front of you is now if you want to move to the left or right, you'd have to snap your cursor all the way back from out up in front of you. You have to move your cursor all the way back to next to your champion to move in one direction or another. And it's a much longer, slower movement to do with your mouse than if your mouse is already next to your champion. So this is, the benefit of attack move. Now, a lot of people are advocating for the new attack move because of the fact that it takes away having to hit A and left click. Instead, you just click and then it's going to go. And I've found this to not be worth it for several specific reasons. Obviously, I'm not super used to it, and I don't think almost anybody is, because probably not a lot of people have switched over to this new attack move. But you would use it the same way as attack moves. So you would use it on the ground next to your champion so you don't have to move your cursor. But there's this issue here with basically attack move working when you press left click and the new attack move like working when you release the whatever key you have. So for me, I have it bound to shift and I think like shift and right click or something like that. And because I have it bound to shift and right click, it not just because it's bound that way, but just the way that this would work in general, no matter what key you have it bound to, when you're holding the key down, it continues to be in that attack move mode until you release the key. So if I go to right click to move to the side to dodge an ability, I have to make sure I let go of my shift key in order to be able to move to the side and dodge. Whereas if I have attack move on, if I've pressed A, it doesn't matter whether I'm still pressing A or whether I've let go. I can instantly cancel it by right clicking to move to the side. Trying to think about this here for a second. Maybe it does have to do with my keybind, because I have it shift mouse button 2, and that's the same as movement, which is mouse button 2. So that's one of the reasons why it's on release. Maybe if you had this bound to like shift left click or something like that, you could probably get away with it not having to be released. So if you shift left click, this would be kind of weird. Let me think about this for a second. It feels weird because you'd be pressing left click and right click down at the same time, which is something you never do in League for anything else. But yes, if you had it bound to a different key, you actually would be able to cancel it with a movement command. The reason why I found I couldn't cancel it with a movement command is because I'm an idiot and bound it to mouse button 2. The other problem I have with it is that if you want it, people who advocate for it say, oh, well, you just press show more champion stats, which I have now bound to C to be a little bit more accessible. So if you just hit show more champion stats, it pulls up all 3 boxes of champion stats and maybe runes and stuff like that as well. It pulls up all these boxes of information, but it also shows the attack indicator around your champion. And that means that if you press that at the same time as you're using this new attack move, you can just hold that key down and it'll show you your range indicator, and then you don't lose the range indicator like you have with attack move. And so they say, well, problem solved, there's no negative there. But it is a negative because you have an extra key that you have to permanently hold down while you're using it that makes it more difficult for me to use my hand to press abilities at the same time while I'm attacking, which is kind of important in a game like League because I can't commit a finger permanently to holding down the show more champion stats tab, to see my range. So that's actually rather annoying. So I think between these things, I found the new attack move to be not preferable. And so I get the appeal of maybe not having to click an extra time or something like that, not having to, to do A and left click, but you have to bind it to something. So even if I have it shift mouse button 2, which is a problem. Don't bind it to that because you can't cancel it with a movement command because you have it on mouse button 2. But even if I had it shift mouse button 1, for example, how is that any different than A and mouse button 1? They're the same thing. Let me think about it. I guess the difference is that you can press shift and mouse button 1 simultaneously, whereas technically you have to press A first, then left click. You can't press them at the same time. But I mean, people who are used to using attack move, you're pressing them basically instantaneously. So I don't know. The comparison to quick cast versus normal cast, I don't think is quite accurate for the attack move versus the new attack move feature. But let's hop into a practice tool game to kind of show some of these concepts, especially the earlier one, so we hopefully get an idea of what's going on. Because while I do like to talk about these things, and I think I did a fairly good job of explaining it, unfortunately, of course, this is a topic that really needs a demonstration. So let's, hop into that real quick. So let's start with the range champion here. We'll throw on the Kaisa, and I'll show you what I mean by these different concepts. So the first thing we're going to show is just what the auto attack looks like on Kaisa. What does the animation look like for her, so we can kind of get an idea of what is the follow through animation and how do we cancel it. So let's target dummy up here. Okay, so first I'm just going to start hitting the dummy. So obviously we're just hitting the dummy here, and basically what you can see is that in a normal auto attack animation, let's see if I can cancel during the windup. So that is like the windup here. This is part of the windup, right? So here is the windup animation, essentially. This is like, you have to go through this, otherwise the auto attack won't go through. And then you have that moment where, boom, it's fired. But look at the difference between this. So I'm going to show you if I just stand here auto attacking, and a lot of people think that that's when their auto attack is done. Boom, the projectile hit the guy, now my auto attack is done. But actually, your auto attack is done here the second that the projectile leaves your champion. So obviously I can start moving away from the target or trying to click backwards behind me. As soon as that projectile has started flying in the air, as soon as I see this kind of blue laser line coming out of the skin, I can just start moving away. And so what a lot of people are doing is they're sitting here and they're moving like this. They're moving between their auto attacks, but they're waiting for their auto attack to hit the target before moving, and you don't need to do that on a ranged champion. Instead, you can just be moving faster by getting away as soon as the auto attack is released. And again, I'm not an AD carry player, I'm a support main, so I'm probably the worst person to demonstrate this, but you get the concept, right? Okay, so we get that. Then what we've got going on is, you know, we have the moving between auto attacks. So this is what a lot of people are doing when it comes to moving between auto attacks, right? They auto attack here, and they know they should move, but see how they start. They're not moving very much because they're trying to start auto attacking over and over again before they're ready. Whereas if I go a little bit slower here with my auto attacks, I'm auto attacking at nearly the same rate, but I'm able to cover much more distance and take much bigger strides because of the fact that I'm simply being more patient with when I'm choosing to go back in an auto attack. So again, really you have to slow these things down to see it, and probably my auto attacking itself is not perfect because I'm a support main. But what you should understand is the theory behind this, which is that we can cancel the follow-through animation as soon as we see our auto attack released in the air, which is more of a timing thing, a memorized timing thing, than seeing the animation. By the time you see it, it's probably hitting them already. So it's more of a, you know, just knowing that I can go. It's actually a little bit hard too, because I have lethal tempo here, which you know, is probably something the AD carries have to deal with all the time. But talk about your attack speed changing. Lethal tempo is changing your attack speed every single auto attack. It's getting slightly different. A little bit difficult for me to handle as a support player. But yeah, so that's part one, is you can move as soon away from your auto attack as soon as it's firing. And part two, that you can actually get more DPS in by, or better dodges in, by not auto attacking too early and instead moving the full extra duration and only auto attacking when your auto is completely ready to fire. Okay, so then let's talk about real quick while we're on a ranged champion, the different attack move options. So again, if we spawn minions real quick, we can see just as a demonstration how this works. We'll fast forward to get a minion wave here. So obviously, like, if this target dummy, what in the world? Did I do 10 minutes on accident? Okay. Oops. So this target dummy is obviously on top of a bunch of minions. What? Why is it still going? Okay. So you can see here when I try to auto attack these minions that it won't let me click them. And so if I put a target dummy like right on top of this cannon minion or something like that, well, I don't want to hit the cannon minion. So if I go to attack move here, really difficult to make sure that I'm attack moving the correct target. Whereas if I have right click and target champions only on, it's impossible for me to click these minions, and I can make sure that whether they're in a minion wave or not, I'm only hitting them. So obviously when they're in a minion wave like that, what choice do you have but to go for something like that? Same thing on a turret dive situation here. Throw that one in. Oh! Almost killed myself there. I accidentally cleared my dummy that was tanking. Often they'll hide behind their turret, and even with this on, you can see here how I'm able to attack move the turret even though I have target champions only on. But if I'm right clicking, I'm gonna die to the minions here. If I have target champions only on and a right click, it won't let me hit the turret. So I can make sure that I can dive this person even if they're behind the, even if they're hiding behind their turret, can make sure that I never miss them. So that's obviously going to be really important. And then finally, I just want to really quickly hop into a practice tool game again on Nautilus to show you what the follow through animation looks like on a melee champion as well. To be honest, it might actually be easier to see than on Kaisa, probably because I'm better at auto attacking on Nautilus, and also because he has a really obvious, I think for most champions in the game, he has a really long follow through animation and a really obvious auto attack animation that's big and easy to see and to cancel. So it's quite interesting to take a look at. So let's finish it up with the example of Nautilus. But yeah, it's pretty much this simple, right? You're canceling your follow through animation. You're moving extra between your auto attacks. You know, not accidentally stopping to auto attack too early. And you're going to, you know, make sure that you're using the target champions only when they're in a minion wave or near a turret or in the grubs pit or something where there's a lot of entities around. But you're going to attack move at your feet here in order to maintain your cursor close to your champion so you can immediately move. You're going to do that instead of attack moving like this, because if you're attack moving like this is the same as right clicking like this, where I'm having to snap my mouse back to my champion in order to move, and so my movement suffers as a result of right clicking on this target. You know, it's really important that I attack move down here. The other thing about auto attacking really quickly is that it's really bad and telegraphed if you start trying to auto attack someone when they're out of your range. So for example, if I right click someone, even if it's the right situation where they're in a minion wave or I'm turret diving them or whatever, although it's probably obvious if you're about to turret dive them, but if they're in a minion wave and I right click to attack them, or I attack move to attack them, the game is just going to launch you into walking in a straight line at your target. And this makes your intent really predictable because you're instantly going to face towards them and show that you're intending to attack them. So if you're standing like this and all of a sudden you turn and face them, they're going to be worried because you're showing intent to attack them. So it's really important that you don't auto until you're actually already in range of the champion. Once you're in range of the champion, then you should attack move, or then you should right click. But you should be utilizing your movement, your normal right clicks and movement as much as you can instead of attack move or instead of right click, because if you target something, even by clicking at your feet, it'll target them. Oh, actually it won't. That's another advantage of attack move, but it would if you're close enough to them. So if you put attack move in range of them, it will. Or even if you attack move in a big straight line, this is the same thing as implementing a straight movement command. So basically it's important that you use your regular movement to get in range of them, then you go for the attack on them instead of doing that. So let's show Nautilus's attack animation real quick. Nautilus, as I said, has two different attack animations, but we're not going to worry about that. We're just going to focus on his big obvious one when he's going to go for the root. And we'll show you what that looks like and what the follow through animation is. So here is just not canceling the follow through animation. This is just what the auto attack animation looks like. You go boom, oops. So you're gonna I accidentally hit twice there, but we're gonna wait for this to refresh. So obviously he goes to hit, he pulls his axe back, then he thonks the guy, but then he's got this big time where his axe is stuck in the person and then he pulls it back. But the thing is that as soon as you've thonked him over the head, like we've talked about, and done that damage, you can pull away. So watch this. This is where we cancel the follow through. So now my axe didn't spend any time, my hook didn't spend any time stuck in the guy. Instead, I was able to immediately walk away. And in a lot of cases, this can mean while they're rooted, being able to walk behind the guy and get really superior positioning, or potentially even, use your body to body block him from walking backwards and stuff like that. Or maybe make it easier for you to, hit a hook or something like that. Whatever the case may be. So really important on both ranged champions and melee champions that you cancel this follow through animation as fast as you can without canceling your auto attack, so that you can get extra movement in. And then the same thing as Kaisa. So, very important on a champion like Nautilus that gets a root on all of his auto attacks. Say I'm team fighting versus 3 enemies. Look at the difference between me just kind of slowly making my way downtown and auto attacking them versus me canceling the follow through animations. Watch this. Oops. Okay, we gotta go again. Okay, reset. I canceled an auto, but it's fine. It's trying to be too fancy with it. You see how much cleaner those auto attacks are when I'm able to just instantly get the auto attacks through and then walk away. I'm getting so much extra movement in that now, because I've spent less time locked in on the first target, I'm actually able to get to the second target and the third target faster. And so maybe this is a situation where if I was super slow and bad with my auto attacks, I'd only be able to root one person in the team fight. But now, because I'm auto attacking efficiently, moving between those auto attacks and only auto attacking when my passive and my auto are ready, and only and canceling the follow through animation, I get so much extra movement that I actually have time to get to 2 or 3 enemies and root them all instead of just one. So that's the concept. Again, we can refer back to the sheet real quick, but again, 3 parts to the auto attack animation: the wind up, the minute or the second that you fire versus deal damage or hit the target if you're a melee champion. And then you can cancel that follow through animation, this extra nonsense after your projectile is fired or after your damage has gone through if you're melee. The theory, of course, in doing this correctly would mean that you're going to cancel your follow through early, but not so early that you cancel your auto attack. This means you're getting 100% DPS efficiency, but only 95% movement efficiency. But that's fine, because if you do it too early, you'll get 0% DPS efficiency, which is simply too bad to be worth it or to accept. So you're going to cancel your follow through animation, but not so early you're canceling your whole auto attack. You're going to move between auto attacks for more than its duration or cooldown. If you need to move more and auto earlier. Oh, somebody followed me on Twitch. I'm not even streaming. Thank you for the follow. You made it into the video. Hello, YouTube. If you're basically here moving between your auto attacks, it's going to depend on the situation. But in most situations, you're going to move between your auto attacks for more than you need to, because the extra distance you're gaining is going to translate into more damage anyways, even if you're auto attacking a little bit too slow. And you're going to save way more HP by dodging out abilities, messing with their timing, etc. So it's more important to prioritize your moving. And because a lot of players' issues is spending an extra 30 or 40% of the time they could be moving starting to try to auto attack too early, it's really important you focus on moving for longer instead of shorter here. But there are some situations where you're like auto attacking each other to death and everyone's out of abilities and mana and stuff like that. And so movement doesn't matter a whole lot because you're just locked in, and your auto attack needs to come out first. Sometimes we call this, like when 2 abilities are coming at each other, we call it jousting, or at least some people have called it jousting. So like if you're jousting with somebody, right? Auto attack, mono v mono, you're stuck, locked in with each other. Distance isn't going to make the difference. Spacing isn't going to make the difference. What's going to make the difference is just your auto attack getting off a 1/10 of a second earlier. If you're in a life or death situation like that, obviously you're going to want to lock yourself into that final auto attack animation as soon as you can. You want to make sure that it's early, even if you're sacrificing movement for that one auto attack in order to do that. So in those situations, you can just stand still and try to auto them to death. We got our 3 types of attacks, inputs that are in the game. Right click we're going to use with the tilde key when they're inside of minion waves or entities or turret diving. And then attack move we're going to use the vast majority of the time, but we're not going to use it on the target. We're going to use it next to our champion so that we're maintaining our cursor position, which is why attack move is actually good in the first place, as opposed to right clicking. So I hope that clears it up. It's these little details, and we'll be following up with some videos on other areas of the game that are really important, like camera control or movement and stuff like that. Little details like this about how to auto attack properly, how to move your camera around or center your camera properly. It's little details like this that often make the difference between a challenger player and like a diamond player, and or even at lower ranks, the difference between like a bronze player and a platinum 80 carry is a lot of auto attack stuff like this. But people are really bad at putting these things into words as league players and explaining them. And obviously for me, I'm good at putting them into words, but the video editing and the demonstrating it part is a little bit difficult. So we'll be trying some more of these things, and I hope that it's helpful. So we'll be, covering some of these details that people don't cover about the game. With that being said, good luck in solo queue and have a wonderful day.